Can you talk about what other market conditions are like and what changes in your training style? I don't know. It's just like there's different market conditions and market cycles, right? Like right now, it's at a point where it's an all-time high, so it's a lot more volatile than what it should be. Like I'll say on a regular basis. So therefore, you have like a different set of plays set for each market condition. So like this condition we're in right now is my most unfamiliar condition, just because all-time highs doesn't happen quite often, right? But if you were to go back to like other conditions, like when you range versus when you continue to drive versus when you pull back to grab liquidity, right? You sort of just set up you like with time, with the years we have on the markets, we've been able to develop plays for different cycles. At first, we never noticed that there was different cycles. So at first it was kind of just like, okay, one playbook for the entire year, which is fine. It's definitely doable, right? Like don't overcomplicate it if you're new. Like don't try to do too much. Try to get familiar with one playbook at first. And then over time, as the year goes on, as years go by, you will realize and see that there's different market cycles. So it's when you range, when you drive, versus when you pull back to grab liquidity, right? It just happens on a much higher time frame scale. So instead of us looking for those things on like the 5 and 15 like we would to look for positions, you would zoom out to like the monthly and the weekly to see how that's all forming. Right? In this case here, like we've never been here before. So like this is all-time highs. Again, I'm very unfamiliar with it. But like when we're like back here, for instance, like back in these ranges, those are things you want to apply. And therefore, the way you trade those years could be different because you're applying a different set of plays, right? So for instance, like we have like continuation, we have liquidity, and then we have range. So when we're at a stage where, so let's say this is liquidity, let's say this is range, and then let's say this is continuation, right? So when we're in a stage where you're grabbing liquidity, you have different plays or in your playbook to look for those liquidity drives, look for those liquidity, those bonks, those talks, etc. Right? You have like, for instance, when you have like a higher time from liquidity play, let's say the weekly's coming down for a bottom wick or something to grab liquidity, then you can apply like fake outs on the whatever time frame, or you can apply the fact that you need to wait for a bottom wick tapping this level before looking for positions back above the ranges, right? But there's different sets of plays which I can't just describe right now because it'll go on forever. But on the stream, as you continue to watch, you'll notice that each time we're in a different part of the cycle, our training style, I wouldn't say change, but we'll have different set of plays. So it might be unfamiliar to you if you've only been with us through the range stage, right? For those who came the last couple of months here, right? For the last like 7 months, you probably realized that the last 2 months has been a little different because you're at a stage where you're continuing to drive, right? Which in this case is all-time highs, so it's a little different. Whereas like the last months prior to this, like the last 4 months before we got a push, we're more so in this stage and this stage. Therefore, the plays were a little different. But that's about it. It's just all about experience. Like the more you're on the charts, the more you know, and the more you know, the more plays you have developed, and the more confidence you have looking for these setups over time. So we might not perform the best the first time we're here, because this is again very unfamiliar with me. But like next year or another time we're all-time highs again, we know what to do, or we have a better way of viewing the markets, and we have a better understanding of what plays to look out for, right? So that's all that's really about, just experience. Like again, this is my, I'll say, 3rd time at all-time highs, and you know, as we go into 4th, 5th, 6th time, 7th time, whenever gold decides to print, the all-time high will get better with each year. But just like anything else, it's just constant and consistent ways to improve it daily. Like that never ends, right? That never ends. It takes a lot of time to get there. 1 hour close, yeah, 1 hour closer. This thing, it didn't close too bad. But depending on where you want to look at it from. If you had a bottom wicker chat, I promise you, this would have been fine. Like we would be here. I guarantee we'll be here, because then you'll expect I'll call this off as a closure above the most recent range, which is above this range to the left here, right? And with it closing above here, I'll say, okay, you know what? You're likely gonna push up to mirror the traffic up towards here now. This could be the range fill. But since there's no bottom wick there to grab that liquidity, we have to wait for that still, right? So therefore, I'll call it off now as my resistance here being respected.